Right, guys, as you can see, I'm on location today for a change. Robin's stuck in his office, and we've been joined by Steve Gallagher. Now, Steve, I'm not going to say this because I always know that you've been bought by another company. Who's it this time?
So we are still owned by the same ownership, which is a private equity company, but they purchased another company that was involved in the same water treatment areas that we were. So they've merged the two companies together. So Segura has now been merged with Solenis to create one of the leading suppliers of water treatment chemicals in the world. So Solenis supply water treatment chemicals to industry and water treatment manufacturers, pulp and paper, and Solenis has now created a new division called Pool Solutions, which is basically the old Segura company. Okay. So we're Pool Solutions, part of Solenis.
And sorry, so big question is, you get a big pay rise, big guy?
Unfortunately, my pay has nothing to do with any mergers, any acquisitions or anything.
Ban them. Come and work for us.
Yeah. So we're still offering the same HTH. It's still made in the same factories. It's still made by the same people. It's been going since 1928. It was the very first calcium hypochlorite available in Europe, made by the people who know calcium hypochlorite. Every other calcium hypochlorite is a copy of ours.
Right, guy, there's the sales pitch, yeah? There's this on a
sales pitch. It's fact, Robin.
Yeah.
It is fact, to be fair. So if anyone, sorry, Steve, if anyone doesn't know you, haven't met you before, do a quick intro. Where's your background? What have you been involved with?
So I'm currently sales director for Europe, Middle East, Africa for the Pool Solutions division of Solenis.
Yeah.
My job role now includes all our commercial distributors, so commercial pools distributors throughout the Europe, Middle East, Africa region. When I say Africa, it's Sahara and North Africa.
That's all right, then, big guy. That makes it a lot easier, doesn't
it? Yeah, absolutely. The geography is a learning. Middle East and Africa was just added on in January to my area of responsibility. So I'm still in a learning curve.
See, when your territory means that you've got to get 6 flights to get to one of your customers, that's a big old territory, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's far cry from your old HTH arch territory where it was, what was it, the north of England and Scotland?
Yeah, so before I have been working for HTH since 2005, and you're right, Robin. I started out looking after the north of the UK, and then I branched out. I started working. I did a bit of work in Russia and Ukraine. Unfortunately, really sad news what's happening there in that disastrous area now. But I have friends in both countries, and their thoughts, my thoughts and prayers are with them. You know, it's a disaster of a situation, and hopefully it's resolved soon. But yeah, I have experience, and both countries, beautiful people, beautiful areas to work. But yeah, thoughts and prayers with friends and also colleagues in those countries.
No, definitely, Steve. That is some good words. So, the reason for this podcast, some of you may or may not have seen, there's been quite a few articles, obviously, with chlorine shortages and statements and various different things. Not all of them completely accurate. I do believe that there has been pools closing in the UK that have struggled to source alternatives and source product. It has been fluctuating a little bit. So, Steve's very, very well came on to this today, and we're this is going to sound a bit wrong, Steve, but we're going to get it straight from the horse's mouth, the situation and what's happening and where things are. So a quick question then, because I know this will help a lot of us, is where in the world do they actually manufacture this stuff, calcium hypochlorite?
Okay, so HTH is manufactured in 3 plants in the world. We manufacture in North America, which is where the majority of our product comes from, into Europe and the UK. We have a small plant in Brazil, in Ituraçu, and then we have a further plant in South Africa in Kempton Park. So those are our 3 factories that are directly owned, managed, and maintained by Pool Solutions, part of Solenis.
Okay, and rival product is
so yeah, there are a number of other calcium hypochlorite manufacturers based in the world, and They are mainly in China, but there's some in Japan. There's also some in India, and there's one in Russia.
See, when he said other chemicals that rival, Stevie, you're supposed to say none of them rival HTH.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
HTH, the shape of the briquette is even
It's
got a
patented, isn't
patent, isn't it, big guy?
When it was first introduced, it was a patented shape.
Yeah,
That's true. We were the first people to introduce granular into the world. Then we brought out the fine powdered shock, which still nobody else can copy. And then just after that, we produced the world's first 7-gram briquette. The shape of the briquette means it's better to dissolve in automatic dosing systems and feeders. So going back to the current crisis, first of all, I would like to place on record my sincere apologies for any HTH user, customer that has been affected by this shortage. It's not through the want of trying, it's not through the want of 100% work rate going into this that we've hit this crisis point. So that's the first point. So apologies to anybody, any of your listeners that has been directly affected by this shortage. The good news is there's light at the end of the tunnel, which I'll come on to a bit later. So the first point is it's all started around the COVID-19 pandemic. So that case is true. It's been widely reported. COVID-19 had a big impact on availability of a lot of products, including Cal Hypo. The main issue has been the availability of containers. Now, when I say containers, I mean the metal 20 and 40-foot containers that go on the ships. If you see the big container ships that have hundreds of thousands of containers on
big
them,
cargo ships, isn't it, Steve?
we're talking about these containers, not the pails the product goes in. So the containers arriving on ships, the main producer of containers is China. So China was the first country affected by COVID. So containers stopped leaving China. As the pandemic moved around the world, containers stopped leaving those countries. When the pandemic was over in China, they started sending out containers again. But because the other countries the containers were landing in still were under COVID restrictions, the container flow stopped. So for an example, the containers on shipping in America had a 40% imbalance, which means of every 100 containers arriving, 60 containers were left in America. Only 40 containers out of every 100 were moving on. So that means there's an imbalance. So as containers leave China, they're not being replaced by that amount. This also has increased inflation. So the inflation rates were announced this week in the UK at 9%. The major contributing factor to that is this container shortage. So for example, a container leaving China with full chemical products for swimming pools, whether it be trichlor, bromine, calcium hypochlorite, before the pandemic was about $1,500 to transport that container from China to Europe and including the UK. Today, the same container cost is $15,000.
So a tenfold increase.
More than in some cases. Some cases it's even higher than that. And just from that point of view, because of the shortage on containers, whoever pays the most for the container gets that container.
So it's almost a bidding war, Steve. Would you say?
You only rent a container. You don't buy it. So
whether it be Samsung wanting to get TVs out of South Korea, or you guys wanting to get some product out of wherever, it's a bidding war.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, you can fit more Samsung TVs in a container than you can containers of Cal Hypo. So that has the price per Samsung TV is actually impacted less than the price of a pail of Cal Hypo, for example.
Yeah, so there's a better markup, isn't there?
You can only get 480 pails average of 25 kilo drums into a 120-foot container. So do the maths.
Cost per drum's a lot higher than
the cost per drum is a lot
telly,
higher, just on transportation.
And the thing is as well, just to reiterate a point you said, that was a container ship heading for Europe. That's not necessarily heading to the UK.
Exactly. So it's all impact. The second major issue that affected during the pandemic was in August 2020, there was Hurricane Laura in the USA. That destroyed a trichlor plant. That trichlor plant is owned by Bayro, and that destroyed 100,000 tons of trichlor being produced. So if you stop 100,000 tons of trichlor, suddenly swimming pools need to look elsewhere. The easiest product to replace trichlor is cal hypo. So cal hypo, the demand for cal hypo in the US has been amazing. 100,000 tons of extra demand in the marketplace. That means there's extra demand on our plant in the US. And because of the cost of containers and the availability of containers, if it couldn't be moved from the US, it was used inside the US. So therefore, there's less product leaving the US to Europe and UK. At the same time, you've got high demand in the US. Therefore, if it's not leaving, it will stay in the US and be used. Before, there was not that demand. Therefore, we could keep some more in warehouses and have it available when containers were available. But now, because of the heightened demand in the US, that has caused us to miss out on probably 3 months worth of manufacturing that could have come to Europe, and it didn't.
Okay.
The other problem that adds into this mix, I need to take you back to August 2015. There was a huge explosion in Tianjin ports in China. Google it. It's incredible. That caused China to change its policy on which ports containers containing dangerous substances like cal hypo, bromine, trichlor, dichlor could leave China. So all the containers now coming out of China with that type of product on must leave from one port, and that's Shanghai. Currently, if you look at Shanghai port, no containers are allowed to leave it because COVID restrictions are still
that's right.
in place now. So you have all this mix of no availability from China, very low container availability around the world, higher demand of cal hypo in USA, lower demand from other countries exporting cal hypo because they can't make it, less ports allowed to ship from China. You've got a big mix causing the shortage of chemicals in Europe at the moment.
It's almost like a perfect storm, and everything's hit you all at the same time, isn't it? Where, plants have went down, problems with shipping container. I mean, obviously you mentioned COVID there, so I'm guessing a lot of the factories obviously shut down because of furloughing staff and couldn't socially distance in a factory and all that sort of stuff. And people, and not just that, lack of staff numbers because of people off with COVID.
Yeah, these are all adding to the impact. And there is one final result. So one final thing to add into the mix is the factory that made the brand melchlorite, or the factory that produces cal hypo in Japan. So Japan has 3 factories of cal hypo. One of those factories has stopped production. So therefore, there's only 2 factories now in Japan allowed or able to produce cal hypo. So there's a shortage of cal hypo in Japan. Therefore, there's no product leaving Japan for Europe now because it's all needed in Japan.
And is that a permanent closure of that factory, or is it just a
temporary thing? We are informed it is, yes.
Permanent closure.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Why is that? Is that because margins are quite tight, do you think, Stevie?
It's I don't know the reason fully. I can make some guesses, but my best guess would be the cost of BPR, because it's not cheap, is a contributing factor. The cost of refurbishing that plant would have been huge, and it's an economic decision. Do we make enough money and enough volume to constitute spending it on this, or should we put the money somewhere else? And I guess they've chosen to put the money somewhere else, but I don't know that. And I must say, that's a guess. It's not
the
fact. Truth.
Yeah. So for anyone who didn't know there, when Steve mentioned BPR, that's the biocidal product regulations, which has an impact on what is technically a biocidal product and what can we use in our pools and what can what's approved, so to speak.
Sorry, I used the BPR.
Yeah, we knew what you were going on about.
Fully explaining. So yeah, because we're heavily involved in the biocidal product regulation process, we manufacture a number of biocides. Therefore, it's a manufacturer importing chemicals into Europe and the UK need to be aware of all the rules and regulations. There's a huge number of tick boxes exercise you have to go through. So there's one situation for Europe, and now because of Brexit, there's a secondary registration you have to do for the UK, which basically means companies wanting to sell to both areas have doubled the cost. It will double the cost of manufacturing and importing chemicals.
Which means that someone like some mad scientist from Aylesbury, when he's driving about in his car, in his Peugeot, trying to sell chlorine tablets out the boot, to satisfy the demand and the gap in the market left by HTH, you got to watch yourself. Yeah. Just ask the question, are you following the BPR? Yeah. Otherwise, you could be in a spot of bother if indeed you cause a chlorine gas leak and they find out that you've been using product that you shouldn't.
Well, it's not just that, it will be stopped at the port nowadays because you have to prove that you are on the imported list. So there's 15 companies on the ECHA list, ECHA being European Chemicals Agency. So they have what's called an Article 95 list. And the Article 95 list is copy pasted into the UK list as well. So if you're not part of that list, and you can Google Article 95 to see who is allowed to import, there's obviously ourselves on there, but there's 14 other companies that are allowed to import. Now, today you can, but during the registration process, you have to pay certain money by a certain deadline. And if you don't, you are removed from that list. So I expect the UK list to be reduced from 15, probably down to 2 maximum.
Really?
Yes.
That's hundreds of thousands, isn't it?
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to say what it's cost us, but it's a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, I know, Steve, this is obviously slightly separate to your products. Me and Robin have spoken to a company before that invented a silver lining for nappies, to do with crypto and pools and stuff like that. And they started to venture down the BPR point to try and get their product approved, to show its properties against crypto for swim nappies. They were,
yes,
and they couldn't afford it.
It's any claim. Basically, if you are claiming you are making a biocide, the definition of biocide is anything that inactivates an organic substance, or organic material. So these are things like algicides, silver, copper to make your algicides,
chlorine dioxide,
chlorine dioxide. Yeah. Anything that goes into water or anything that goes onto a surface that inactivates organic material is classed as a biocide. Mm-hmm. And you have to be registered. You have to show that what you claim on the label is correct. So it's not necessarily the registration process that's expensive. It's proving that what you are claiming on your label is correct. You have to go through a huge number of tests. You have to use independent laboratories to prove that your chemical will destroy Legionella, for example, bacteria, cryptosporidium, for example. If you claim your product can kill cryptosporidium, you have to prove it in a lab exercise that is independent from your own company. So it's that costs a lot of money.
But what it does do, Stevie, is that it means that the client, the customer, the consumer will be buying something in confidence. And,
absolutely.
You and I have both gone through an era where there have been pretenders, so to speak, in terms of the chemical market coming in and trying to suggest that their product is like for like. And we know, and you and I know, that the standards and the quality is not the same. So this should kind of weed out the lesser quality products that maybe can't prove their standards are where they need to be.
That's correct. It's keeping the end users or the users of the product safe and making sure that you're not putting any dangerous substances into your swimming pool, which can only be a good thing. And I have no issue with competition, but it needs to be fair competition.
Yeah.
And if we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, you're all doing the same testing, and all the labels are proved that what you claim on those labels are fine, no problem.
So just keep an eye out for Ogilvy Cal Hypo distribution services. Just check the labels, guys, you know.
And Steve, I know this. I know, as you said, your products are made elsewhere, but it's interesting because one of the things that I've been hit with is obviously the Russia-Ukraine war, which is not great, and shipping product from the Asian countries. And I've said to various people all the time, and you can help me confirm this as well. They don't drive it in lorries from China to Europe. You know, it comes it comes in cargo ships. This is what lorry drivers
take a long time.
Yeah, exactly. What lorry? As I said, from obviously shipped from Shanghai when it can leave Shanghai. They take it all the way up the Gulf into the Red Sea. Across the Suez Canal by Egypt, into the Med, and then into Europe that way. That's the shortest route, so to speak.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, even similar if it's coming from India, that is the shortest route to get the product here.
Just so there were a lot of Ukrainian lorry drivers in and around Europe, so that has impacted the shortage. There is a global shortage of lorry drivers because when the pandemic hit, lorry drivers found other jobs and other professions to go to when they weren't shipping goods because there was nothing open, therefore there was no need. And there is a global shortage of lorry drivers, so you make a product, the product is not necessarily made near a port. So you need a lorry driver to take it from the plant to the port. You then need from the port to the warehouse, from the warehouse to the distributor, from the distributor to the end user. And everybody uses the same thing. There's very few chemical companies based at a port that can just load it onto a ship. So you do need lorry drivers all over the globe.
You're right. And my father was a lorry driver for his entire working career until he retired, Steve. And I know that having quite close knit, my dad drove for Eddie Stauberts for many years. He was one of the original drivers back in the day when he started before he retired. And he retired some years ago. But I know that a lot of lorry drivers, when COVID hit, any that were quite close to retirement just said, that's it, I'm done. And threw in. So that created a shortage as well. And then because there was no lessons taking place and the test centres were closed, they weren't getting any of the new drivers through. And as
Correct.
you say, a lot of the Ukrainians, I suppose a lot of Ukrainian lorry drivers may well have went back to fight for their country, which a lot of Ukrainian people have done. So again, another problem.
Absolutely.
As part of it. And Steve, I'm sure you saw the article in The Guardian this week, which was put out. And what do you think of the article that was put out there?
When I first read the article in The Guardian, I thought, well, there is some misunderstandings here. Now, to be fair to The Guardian, they have recorrected it. So on the 15th of May, they did do a reprint and an update onto the article. So it is now reading correctly. But when it first came out, it wasn't 100% accurate. It was claiming things that weren't actually correct. So hopefully the record is updated and better. But there's no manufacturing facility in Ukraine for calcium hypochlorite. That I can confirm.
Yeah, that doesn't exist. I mean, but as you said, Cal Hypo is manufactured in Russia, and I'm guessing obviously the Cal Hypo in Russia is not coming into us just now because it's probably part of the restrictions that we're not buying any products or any goods, so to speak, from them. I would have thought that would be the case.
So today there's no calcium hypochlorite coming into Europe from Russia or from India because neither have been granted any access to the European or UK market through the BPR process.
So what you're saying is me and Robin need to get ourselves to Aberdeen, nick a fishing boat, Get down to
If
India.
you can get any shipping with any containers of any sort, you're made up.
Yeah, that's what we need to do, Robin. Shipping container.
Big man,
Look,
it's done. It's in
you're
my
gr-
garden. It's in my garden at home. Yeah,
Yeah.
all sorted. You just
said-
need to sort out the BPR stuff, which is not cheap. by
No,
the
nah,
way.
mate. We'll just
Yeah.
we'll just land it somewhere up in the Western Isles.
White buckets with a label on it that says chlorine granules. That's it. Yeah,
Great.
none of this. You don't need to worry about the CLP regulations or nothing, you know. Just
Yeah.
a wee sticker on it. Yeah.
So
I
has
wouldn't
it
advise anybody doing that.
yeah,
No. Don't do this at home, as they say.
Yeah. Has there been issues around the actual the pails then, the buckets, the containers?
Yes,
so to speak?
there's also been, because of, again, down to the pandemic, pail supplies. So our pail manufacturers, we were on about a 2-week lead time. So basically, we put the order in for, I don't know, 30,000 pails of 25 kilo easy flow briquettes. It would be in our plant being filled after 2 weeks. During the pandemic, that got extended, and today we are on a 4-month lead time.
It's about 16 weeks.
Yes.
Listen, forget about dealing in chemicals, Ian. There's too many regulations. Start making the drums. That's what we need to be doing. Yeah.
Hey, if you could make them less than 16 weeks, we'd buy them from you, telling you now.
Make them, I'll collect them.
Yeah.
Now, that's another issue, because we obviously in the UK have a lot of empty pails. You think, great, why not collect them and refill them? Sounds easy, but it's impossible, because you've got to guarantee there's no chemical in any of the drum. Even if there's 1 granule in 1,000 drums collected, they are classed as hazardous waste and not plastic to be recycled. Then you've got the problem of transporting them to the factory. As you know, we've only got 3 factories globally. There's no shipping route between Europe and Brazil, so you can't send them there. So that means you've got to send them to either South Africa or America. If you can guarantee they're clear and clean, then you refill them, then you bring them back. How much did I say each container was at the moment?
16 weeks, you told? I don't know how
No.
much.
How much was each container of?
1,500 quid. But it's 15,000 now.
Yes,
yeah?
it's £15,000 for a container.
So what we need to do, Chief, we can't use the containers, right? We need to get a yacht, yeah? And we need to get them in there. And we'll just take a wee holiday, yeah?
So
Listen,
we've looked at all this, and
we know someone with a yacht.
It's
we
not
do.
economically viable to collect empty pails and send them back to the factory for
You know
refilling.
what?
You just can't do it.
Steve, this bloke would just do it because he loves his yacht.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. In fact, I reckon we could make a boat out the containers and make a raft.
I didn't realise I'd joined a play school event as well.
No. So you did say there's potential for light in the horizon, Steve.
Yes, there is. So, like I say, the 4-month period of delays between our pails has now passed. So that means we're now back on track. So we've caught up with the supply chain problem of the empty buckets. Let's call them buckets rather than containers. So the empty buckets we're now ahead of the game in terms of 16-week supply. So therefore the buckets are reaching now. We're planning when they are reaching the plants, we can fill them on time now. And we've negotiated more containers availability on the shipping lines. And as we speak, we have something like 150 containers on ships coming to Europe. Not all those are coming to the UK, of course, because Europe needs a lot of these containers as well. But it's a split between UK and Europe. So my best guess would be by the 2nd week of June, the UK distributors will have a lot fuller warehouses than they have today, which means by the 3rd week of June, swimming pools should be able to start getting regular supplies of the HTH material. And then it will continue because we'll have caught back up again. But between now and the middle of June, it will still continue to be a tight basis. And we're not only talking cal hypo for swimming pools here, we're talking cal hypo for industry. So people like Coca-Cola, if they use cal hypo, they will only use Solenis cal hypo, because we're the only manufacturer that can specify the products to their needs. So that means if industry also needs it, swimming pools are not just going to get everything. We have to divide it between industry and swimming pools as well, of
So
course.
yeah, like you said, there's what 480 buckets or pails.
72,000 drums are on their way, big guy.
Yeah, but
72,000.
72,000 drums.
Split between Coca-Cola and
I'm not just saying Coca-Cola, but
yeah,
drinking water stations, Coca-Cola, drink manufacturers, that type of thing.
And in the grand scheme of things, when it comes to priority, swimming pools are maybe not quite at the top of the list.
Unfortunately, not, no.
They tend to be somewhere down below paper mills, if I remember correctly from my old chemical distribution days. But number 9 on the list, but that's understandable because up the top of the list is drinking water, you've got foodstuffs, you've got pharmaceuticals, you've got all of that sort of stuff, which is essential for daily life.
Even nuclear cooling. So a friend of mine works at Sellafield, and he needs truckloads of liquid chlorine just to keep his nuclear fuel cool. You're not going to disrupt that supply chain for a swimming pool.
No. Steve, just out of curiosity, let's just and this is just to try and give people an idea. Let's say the American factory, Brazil factory, whichever it might be, right? So let's say I start manufacturing some cal hypo today. I make 1 bucket right today. What do you reckon the time is from manufacture to get it into the pail, on the ship, across the sea, docked?
Great question.
Distributor, supplier, and then finally to the point where I then open that bucket and fill my granules machine or whatever, or other rival brands, whatever it might be. What do you reckon? What do you reckon the time frame is roughly?
So let me take you through the time frame. So we run the plant. So our plant is split into 3 parts. We have the shock plant, we have the granular plant, and we have the briquette plant. So we can fill X number of drums of briquettes per day. So let's say you make that 1st of January. It takes about 10 days to get it to the port, but it also takes 10 days to book your vessel. So if you make day 1, you also day 1 you book the vessel.
Okay.
So that way, when it gets to the port, the vessel is there and you are ready to load the vessel. So that's 10 days. So we're at the 10th of January now. Then it takes, 10 days to fill the vessel, because you're talking 30, 40,000 containers on that vessel.
Yeah.
So 30, 40,000 containers on that vessel. So another 5 to 7 working days. So that's 2 weeks. So we're at the 20th of January now. Then the vessel sails. It's got a 3-week sailing time, 21 days to get to Rotterdam. So Rotterdam, Antwerp area, or UK port. So three weeks, let's say, to get to the port. So where are we now? 20th January to going into March. Early March arrival. From there, you have to clear customs, whether it's UK or European customs. So that takes about 5 days. Then it's another 2 days to get the container into the warehouse. Then another 2 days to plan the container emptying, and then put it on a truck to send it to our distributors. So that's another two days. So you're talking another 10 days. So where are we now? Middle of March. Then let's say the UK. So from the UK warehouse to our major distributor, Brentag, they're the largest distributor alongside Univar, and then Complete Pool Chemicals, CPC. They all distribute. So it's about, another 3 or 4 days for the truck driver to get there, for it to get offloaded in their system, their paperwork is updated. Then another 3 or 4 days to put it on their vessel and get it on their truck, and then to get it to the swimming pool. So where are we now? end of March, early April. So a drum made on the 1st of January will arrive at the end pool if everything works like
Yeah,
clockwork,
it's perfect.
not before the end of April.
So we're looking about 120 days.
Yes. If
So,
everything works like clockwork.
yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately, if you're even an hour late at the port, you miss
Oh,
that
ship's
ship,
gone.
you have to wait for the next one. Even though you can see it, it's too late. You have to wait for that ship to get loaded. That ship sails, next one comes in. If they've got space, you then get put on that one.
But Steve,
But you're
interesting.
at the back of the list.
Interesting you say that there, because my dad's final job when he was getting a bit too old to drive was he worked for a logistics company who were contracted by Cunard's, the big sort of cruise ship company.
Yeah.
And one of my dad's jobs was to turn over the ships in a singular day. So the cruise ship's coming off, being cleaned, and it had to be ready by 2 o'clock usually, or 2 or 4 o'clock to set to sail. And he used to show me schedules where it was to the minute, where he knew that the fruit and veg guy was coming in, and that forklift driver had 17 minutes to unload the fruit and veg lorry. The next one was just one solid toilet roll. So I imagine it's a military operation like that, the HTH lorry, so to speak, has to be in the port at exactly this time, and the forklift driver or whatever getting the container off has only got exactly 6 minutes to get it off and into position.
Yeah, I don't know the exact time, but it'll be something like that.
It'll be like a military operation.
We have a big schedule to meet, and obviously we have our logistics team doing that, but we have had to bring in extra support for our logistics to get everything caught up. So the good news is all our needs for Europe and the UK have been made now for the next 3 or 4 months. We just now have to plan all the shipping containers and bring them in. So I'm talking 74,000 drums. Robin worked it out. Coming into Europe by the middle of June, we'll have another lot coming in by the end of June, another lot by the beginning of July, so that we will then be caught up. But right now, we've had no imports. We had no ships come in with our product into Europe for the first 3 months of this year. So basically, we're 3 months behind.
So would you say that you generally do about 2 ships a month, would you, into Europe sort of thing? 2-3 ships?
Into the UK, it's normally it's 1 ship per month with about 15, 16 containers per ship for the UK.
Okay.
Normally.
Yes, that's still quite a lot.
But if I say that, obviously, that allows us to build up some safety stock so that if extra swimming pools need more chlorine, let's say it's a super hot summer and they're open a bit longer and more people go swimming to cool down in the heat, then that pool will use more chlorine. If you multiply that by 2,000 pools, you've got a lot more chlorine demand in the UK market. So we have some safety stocks to cope with that normally. But in December, we ran out of all our safety stocks and we didn't get replenished in January, February or March. We had some coming in April. We had some coming in May, but nowhere near enough.
Yeah,
so what we've had to do with the major distributors is say, well, when product comes in, you can only have this amount of your outstanding orders. Then therefore, they have to say to their customers, the swimming pools, sorry, you can only have 1 drum now instead of 20 drums.
It's interesting that you say that, because I mean, I'm at a pool today as an example. I'm on location, but they're using HTH. Got a pallet of HTH downstairs on a bundle.
They could
train.
sell it for twice the price they bought it for.
and they've got about 12 buckets. So I'm not going to tell anyone, or 12 pails. I'm not going to tell him where I am because I've got a transit van on the back.
It'll be a Target.
It already
They've
is.
got more than us. Honestly, they have got more than we have in our warehouse.
No, but as you say that, if you ran out in December, hypothetically, and with this site here carrying 12 buckets, they're probably not panicking just now because they're thinking, oh, that's a couple of months. You know what I mean? So then what happened, obviously, December is the last delivery. January, they were fine. February, they were fine. March, they're going, oh, we're getting a bit low on buckets, trying to get an order in. And that's when a lot of these pools have struggled because initially they didn't get any more buckets, so to speak, because it's enough. And one of the bonuses I've always thought with HTH as a product is its shelf life. So you can get a load of buckets in, and store it because it's got a much better shelf life than some of the other chlorine-based disinfectants on the market. It's got a great shelf life.
Absolutely. I mean, so part of the BPR process, you have to prove that the shelf life you are claiming is correct. And
Okay.
how you do that is an independent lab takes your product and stores it. And when it's
God.
lost 10% of the strength that is tested on day one, that's when the shelf life stops. So, for example, 68% Cal Hypo, which is our average, we actually manufacture at 70%. You can generally, it's 68% by the time it reaches customers, 65% after 2 years. If it loses more than 6.8% in strength after 2 years, you cannot claim 2 years shelf life.
Okay.
So therefore, the testing process for one of the tests you have to prove is a minimum 2-year
So you
process
basically
in an independent lab.
so basically you gave a bucket to a lab and you just let it sit in the corner, and every once in a while tested the bucket to see the percentage drop.
Pretty much. And that's for briquettes, for granular, for shock, for sticks.
Oh God.
It adds up.
It's not an easy process.
No. But again, it's like I say, proving what you say on the label. So yeah, we now can prove categorically you get 2-year shelf life with HTH.
Brilliant.
If you do the same test with sodium hypochlorite, I don't think it's quite as long.
No, not quite.
Me and Robin had an experience with a 25-litre barrel. Was it last year or the year before?
Last
year, and we said to them, we needed it for shock in a pool, and we said, how much? So we'll take that barrel. Can we take that barrel? And they go, yeah, you take that barrel. I said, oh, that's our spare. And we went, oh, hang on a minute. And I think Robin said, how long's it been there? Was it 18 months?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And where I was only
like water.
where I was only planning putting a couple of litres in, we actually tipped the entire 25 litre, the entire thing in. And I still don't think it did what we wanted it to do.
No, just raise the TDS.
So
quite high.
The other thing I thought of is if people want to save chlorine, so how to operate their pool more safer. So with HTH, if you switch from granules to briquettes, you will save about 7% in usage, which is quite significant. For example, in a day tank, there's less natural wastage of briquettes versus granular. So that's one way to save. The other way to save is if you switch from a day tank to an automatic feeder, an automatic dosing unit, you will save probably in the region of 10% chlorine because of the natural dissipation of the strength of chlorine created in the day tank. What happens with all liquid chlorine? So if you make a liquid solution of Cal Hypo, in a day tank, it's probably about 5%. And in a feeder, it's about 2% solution. Chlorine will naturally dissipate into the atmosphere. Every day it's made into a liquid until it's down to 2%. Once it gets to 2% or below, it's very stable in terms of dissipation into the atmosphere. It doesn't lose any more strength. So if you just produce a 2% solution, you actually don't waste chlorine to the atmosphere. You just it keeps it in solution. So an automatic dosing system is much more efficient at creating a chlorine solution than you are in a day tank, because somebody will do a different number of scoops to every litre every time. They'll add some more because it's a Friday, for example.
So those two little tips just there, Steve. I mean, I know it's obviously they're going to have to spend a little bit of money on dosing equipment and stuff if they're on a day tank system, to switch across. But as you say, even if you just switch from you've got a day tank system, you switch from granular to briquettes, that's a 7% saving there.
Yes, immediately.
And then if you did have the money and you could switch to a dry feeding system, there's another 10%. So that's 17%. So that's almost a fifth of a bucket. That's almost 20% of a bucket. So, that's every 4 buckets, you've got a bucket free.
Yes.
Almost. Almost. For some very rough figures.
It'll put less demand on our supply chain, which will really help.
Well, you do see the industry as well, Steve. So you know that pools are obviously squeezed with utilities and and COVID and staffing crisis and everything just now. So anything that they could do to save money and if it means saving a bit of chlorine. And not just that, that saving that you make there, it means that I have to go in and fill the feeder less, if you know what I mean. So
Correct.
it's one of the most dangerous jobs you're going to do, although if done safely, it can be done very, very well, is to, you know, fill the feeder. And if you're filling it less, that means I've got more time to deal with customers, more times to be up in reception, on the floor, and less worrying with it.
And feeders are much more easy to look after. They're easy to clean. You can get access to them nowadays. Our feeders, the EasyFlow F20, EasyFlow F50, they will be absolutely fine for most commercial pools in the UK. Easy to install. You can install them in less than 4 hours, and they'll last you 5 to 7 years. Not huge capital. Granidoses, again, they're good systems, but the capital outlay is a lot more, probably 4 times the price of an automatic briquette feeder.
And you've got a self-cleaning mechanism now with the feeders, don't you?
That's correct, yeah. So the F20 and F50 self-cleaning inside. You only need once a week to clean the grid where the briquettes sit on, but you get 2 grids in a box. So you just swap over the grids once per week. And then rinse out the feeders once a month and get the installer to check it once every 6 months.
And for me as well, when I was always looking at those feeders anyway, I never used to put too many scoops of briquettes in them, if you know what I mean. It's always easier just to have quite a low number on them, so you could always...
That's correct. So we don't advise putting any more than 2 days use inside the hopper, because for that exact reason. If you have a problem, it's only when you first fill it, and then you've got to empty it out anyway. So if you only fill it with maximum 2 days worth of product, then at least you're checking the feeder every 2 days.
A lot of the times it's external factors like high alkalinity that contributes to that as well, Stevie, isn't it? That causes
Cal Hypo doesn't like high alkalinity, so if you can make sure your alkalinity on your mains incoming water is low, or put a dealk unit on before the feeder inlet, you'll be absolutely fine with Cal Hypo, with HTH.
Brilliant.
But the HTH feeder and the HTH briquette are the easiest and number one solution to keep your pool water clean by far. Having used a lot of products, being an ex-swimming pool manager myself, I know the downs as well as the pluses, and there's less downsides with the HTH system.
Of course, he's not biased, but do you know what? You know, it's a good pitch. It's a good pitch, big guy. I like it.
It's not a pitch, it's the truth. we believe we have the best solution. We have the largest market share of any other Cal Hypo in Europe. We have about 40% of the Cal Hypo market in Europe out of 15 suppliers.
It's good. It's good. And where for our clients, if there's somebody listening right now that wants to change from their current disinfectant, which might be something different from calcium hypochlorite or HTH, where can they get information on it?
So if you go to hth.co.uk, you'll find all our distributors there and all our contact details.
Brilliant.
Does that also have details of the F20 and F50 feeders, Stephen?
It has every detail you need, where to buy, how to use. There is a really nice video of the EasyFlow feeder in action on that website as well.
Super. Nice.
Have a look at it. If you want to put a link on that, I'll send you a link to your information. You can put a link to the video. It's an interactive video. It just shows you what's available. You don't have to put everything together, but the ideal solution for pools is the feeder with the briquettes. It's the safest solution that we find for HTH installation and dosing into a swimming pool.
So we can Ian, can we put that on the YouTube channel, do you think?
Yeah, I can quite easily do that. I can put a link across the bottom of the video and a link into the post of it, so that'll be perfect.
That'll be fantastic. Super. Thank you very much. But yeah, the feeder produces less than 2% solution, so it never loses strength inside the feeder. But because it's dosed via a venturi, it's sucked out of the base and put into the pool. There's no dosing pumps involved. So there's no foot valves to clean, there's no non-return valves to clean, there's very little mess to look after. It produces on demand, otherwise it's flushing itself through with pool water. It's really easy solution. And by the way, we are the only Cal Hypo manufacturer that produces our own dosing system. All the other dosing systems on the market are produced by non-Cal Hypo manufacturers.
And just as well, just for anyone out there listening, the feeder will link into your current automatic dosing system. So regardless of whether you're Easy Troll, Bayroll, Kunza, Stranko, you know.
Yeah, we'll go with any controller on the market.
So
it just needs an on-off signal coming out. No problem.
There's no and you have to buy the controller and you have to change the controller. None of that. It's the dosing part of it linked to the controller.
It's just a wee relay switch that's connected to, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just a solenoid valve.
That's right.
It just turns a solenoid valve on or off.
That's right.
That's
just
it.
lets water in.
So
that's it. Yeah.
When an automatic controller needs chlorine with the dosing pump, it tells the dosing pump to pump. All the controller does with the feeder system is open the solenoid and allow water to hit the briquettes, which creates a chlorine, which then goes into the pool.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Superb, guys. I'm going to have to go, but Stevie, nice to see you again.
Yeah.
Great bit of information. I'm sure it'll be well received by the industry and those that listen in will be intrigued to see the numbers of people that are that a big name like Steve Gallagher attracts to the podcast and the YouTube channel. So we'll be looking with.
Thank you very much for your time and thanks for the invite. And if anybody has any issues with the HTH team, just use the hth.co.uk website to make contact, and we can point them in the right direction or give them some advice.
Perfect.
Brilliant, Stevie. Thanks very much.
Take care. Thank you very much.
Cheers, guys. Speak to you soon.
Bye.